Hello biology students, here is your study guide key for Chapter 1, Introduction to Biology. Quickly up at the top here we have our vocabulary. Biology is the study of living things. Organism is one single member of the species, which is one critter. So a single organism could be one human, one bacterial cell, one bird, etc. Development, in the terms of growth and development, is when we have different abilities that are acquired over time, like when you develop acne as a teenager, or when a tadpole develops into a frog. Growth is when you increase size because of cell division, not just because you're adding material like a sandstone would do, but because of cells. Response is when you react to a change. So if you snap your fingers, people hear it and they turn toward the sound. That is a response. A response to an internal change would be if you eat something disgusting and your body responds or reacts by vomiting that up. Stimuli are any kind of change that affects an organism. That's what we're going to respond to. So snapping your fingers, stimuli. Eating something that doesn't agree with your stomach, that's an internal change. That's stimuli. Species, that's a group that are genetically and physically similar, and they're separate from other groups. So, for example, squirrels are a species separate from chipmunks. They don't interbreed, they're genetically different, physically different from each other, but all squirrels that are in the members of the same species are going to be genetically and physically similar. Adaptations are inherited changes that occur over time, and they help us survive in our environment. Homeostasis, you should know, it's maintaining stable internal conditions. A control group is a part of the experiment that is constant. You have something to compare your results to. So for example, in our minnow lab, that would be when we had the minnows at room temperature. That was just what they were doing normally. That's how they had been all day. And then we compared cold water to hot water based on the control group. So we saw that they breathed less in cold water and more in hot water. Dependent variable, this is depends on what you've changed. It responds to what you have changed in the experiment. This is what you actually are going to measure. Independent variable is what you choose to change. You change it on purpose to test something, and this is what we manipulate in the lab. Quantitative, remember the word quantity. It's number-based. It's measurable. Qualitative, this is descriptive data, and it is not measurable. Alright, let's go through the characteristics of life. They're slightly different than what you saw in notes. I can pull those up for you as well. But basically we have 7 characteristics. First one is all about cells and cell organization. So we're going to put together these 2 categories right here. That's what we did in notes. So everything is made of 1 or more cells, and cells are the basis of everything bigger than that. So it goes from cells to tissues to organs, like a kidney, to an organ system like your urinary system. Put all the body systems together, you get an organism. And all of those structures serve a specific purpose. Examples of single-celled organisms would be things like amoebas or paramecium. Multicellular would be like us. Organization causes structures like organs, like a tongue or like a kidney or a bladder or a stomach. And then you add all those together, you get systems like your cardiac system or your digestive system. Second one is growth and development. And we know that growth causes us to increase in mass and in size. And then your development results in different abilities as you age. So that would be, once again, tadpoles developing into adult frogs. They're increasing in size, and then they've also got different abilities. Reproduction. Remember that can be sexual or asexual. They're going to reproduce and pass along traits from parent to offspring. Next one is response to stimuli. With response to stimuli, that means that if something changes internally or externally, the organism is going to respond. So they're going to chase a gazelle, they're going to run away from a predator, things like that. Next one is energy requirement. So that's metabolism. You need to both generate and use energy. So you need to find food, you need to process waste, all of that kinds of things. And that should say plants, not planets. Alright, homeostasis is the next one that you should definitely know by now. We've done lots of labs on that, which means that you keep your insides stable. So that would be regulating temperature, regulating blood sugar, regulating cholesterol, hydration, everything like that. Your body tries to keep it in balance. And then the last one, this is sort of related to heredity, and it's also adaptations. And so when you inherit things from your parents' generation, over time it's going to help you survive. Because if they survived an environment, then they can pass it on. So the example I gave in class would be the zombie virus. If your parents are immune to it, they're going to survive the zombie apocalypse, and their children will have that immunity. And then anybody who survives in that generation will also have immunity, and they pass it on to their offspring. People who don't have the immunity, well, they tend to get eaten by zombies. Alright, so here's some more examples of homeostasis down here. I have lots of them. So in minnows, we saw that they changed their breathing rate so that they could have the same level of oxygen no matter what happened to the oxygen around them. Internally, they had the same. We control blood sugar using our liver and pancreas. If it's too high or too low, it can be really harmful. You can actually fall into what's called a diabetic coma. If your blood sugar gets too low, it just can't fuel your brain very well. If your blood sugar gets too high, it kind of puts you in overdrive, and it's kind of like a panic attack reaction in some people. Animals, we have to control our water. So we can concentrate our urine to save water. If you are overly hydrated, you have very dilute urine. You can shut down your sweat centers. If you get really dehydrated on a super hot day, you know you're in trouble when you stop sweating because your body has run out of water to spare and it's trying to hold on to as much as possible. We control our body temperature, shivering, sweating, but also in extreme cold, we send all of our blood to the core of our bodies and it doesn't go to our fingers or toes, and that's how you get really bad frostbite and things. Plants have lots of examples of homeostasis as well. In dry environments, they're going to have a thick waxy layer to prevent water from evaporating from their tissues. It's kind of like putting saran wrap around the plant. It's a plasticky, waxy layer. And we see that a lot in cactuses and plants called succulents. They're the ones that have those thick, gooey, fleshy leaves like an aloe plant. Plants can also have really deep roots so that they can draw more water to keep their water in balance even if there's a drought. Plants that have too much water, they do something called transpiration. And so they basically sweat or breathe out water vapor through pores in their leaves. They can excrete waste just like we do to keep that concentration in balance, and then their salt content as well. They can force dissolve salts into their cells if they're used to being in a saltwater environment, or if they're used to being in a freshwater environment, they can force salt out of their cells. Scientific theories and scientific laws are something that a lot of people get confused on. A theory is based on lots of tests of a hypothesis. So let's say we've got theory of gravity. We're going to drop a lot of things, we're going to time them and measure them all, and we're going to develop that theory basically when everybody says, okay, it's the same result every single time. So theory of relativity, that's a physics thing, astronomy thing, and then theory of natural selection. Same result almost every single time. Scientific law is what happens when we have a theory and we test it for a long, long time, and we basically accept it as a fact. There's got to be some sort of mathematical evidence to make a scientific law, and we have very few scientific laws that people just assume this is always going to be true, and most of those have math to back them up. So we estimate there's less than 20 actual scientific laws, and most of them have to do with physics so that we can prove them with math. If you say you have a theory about it, that's like saying you have a guess. In science, a theory has to be backed by a lot of experimental data, has to be agreed upon by lots of different scientists. And then the Dr. Jackie Buell example is one that was in the book, and it goes through the scientific process. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, but basically the scientific process is laid out for you. You make observations, draw conclusions. You're going to select a subject to test, collect some data on it, do some more research, challenge some theories, add some more questions based on what you saw, test some claims, and then you send it out to all of your peers in science, and they look at it. They're experts, so they are going to either agree with you based on their expertise, or they're going to challenge you based on their expertise and suggest other potential reasons why something happened the way it did. So here's the scientific method. Observations lead to questions. Questions need to be researched. Once you have research, you can develop an inference, so a conclusion based on that inference. Then you're going to develop a hypothesis, something you can test through an experiment. Once you have your experiment run, you analyze all those results. Sometimes that leads back to more questions, which then leads to more research, so this can detour over here. But once you've got good results, then you can draw a conclusion from it. Once you have a conclusion that you're pretty solid on, then you publish it out to your peers, other scientists. They observe what you have, they ask questions, and the cycle continues again. A hypothesis is an if-then-because statement. If independent variable, then dependent variable, because, explain. It's showing the explanation, or I'm sorry, the relationship between variables. We're saying that the independent and dependent variable are linked. And we'd use this to test it to see if what our original idea was, our original inference, was correct. Control group and experimental group. Control group does not change. We don't manipulate it in any way. It's held constant. So that would be like in our minnow lab, leaving the minnow in room temperature water, what he had been in the whole time. Experimental group is changed, and we're going to compare it to the control. So this is when we changed the temperature of the water and compared it to room temperature water and saw how the fish responded. So here's the examples again. Independent variable is what's tested. We change it on purpose. Dependent variable, we measure that. It's the result. And then the constant is what remains fixed during the experiment. We never mess with the constant. Quantitative and qualitative. Remember, quantitative deals with a quantity. It's number-based, it's measurable. Qualitative, it's something that's descriptive, kind of fuzzy. You can't really assign a number to it, so that would be things like colors, textures, behavior, emotions, anything like that that you get off of an observation. And then you don't really need to know metric units, but just as a review, metric units for length, meters, mass, grams, and volume is in liters. If you have any questions at all, go ahead and check out my website. There's a folder on my website. I'll show you, whoops, right here. If you go to my website, scroll down and over to the side, you'll see this Unit 1 Introduction folder. That folder is full of all the notes we've taken so far this quarter, and also has additional copies if you need it. Good luck to all of you. See you at the test tomorrow.